Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dauphin.
I wanted to take just a minute on this podcast episode to tell you a little bit about the online course that we are offering now, the Bit Course 2.0, Understanding How and Why Bits Function. You can find it at the website, thebitcourse.com, which will be linked in the show notes. This is a very comprehensive course. We've got two different versions. There's a masterclass version where weekly we have live calls and go over the modules and the study guide. That course has been running 25 to 30 hours over the course of 7 weeks. If you take that version, you're also eligible to go through our BIT certification program and take that test. It's at no additional cost if you want to add consulting about bits to your repertoire of body work or whatever else you might be doing. We also will have an evergreen version that you can take anytime you work at your own pace. It is less expensive. It's also a lot less content. You don't have the weekly Zoom calls with me. Those are going about 2 to 2.5 hours each week. So the masterclass course winds up 25, 30 hours long. The evergreen course you're going to do in 12 to 15, something like that. So check it out. You can go to thebitcourse.com, sign up for the free newsletter. You'll get a 30-minute video on the foamy mouth and all of the implications of that, as well as 5 or 6 articles that I've written regarding bits. Get a feel for the content. This will absolutely be some of the best money and time you have ever spent on your horsemanship journey, I assure you. And it is not discipline specific. We cover just about every aspect of the horse world that you can think of. Our guests today are Mike and Christine Stokley. They own Big Creek Livestock, which is a working ranch and cow-calf operation, as well as an equine facility. They stand the quarter horse stallion Pepto Shine, who has 95 AQHA points in heading and heeling. They also raise babies, sell weanlings, yearlings, etc. Big Creek Livestock is also an educational center. That's actually how I met them, doing an educational event. They do horsemanship, colt starting, roping, and cattle work throughout the year. Mike grew up ranching and farming on the family farm. His grandfather raised tobacco and cattle. When Mike was 15, he was lured into the rodeo arena where he rode all 3 rough stock events, but mainly saddle broncs. He won a rodeo scholarship from Copenhagen and Skoll, so that whole raising tobacco thing sounds like went full circle, came back around and helped. I like that. Copenhagen and Skoll promotes him to continue his education at Eastern Kentucky University, where he received a bachelor's in animal science. Christine's background is more in the horsemanship side of things. She studied under Ray and Buck. She's taught kids lessons and done camps. And when they got married, they sort of melded all that together more into the clinics and things. They also now do cowgirl retreats where you can take your bra off and have yourself a good time. And it's a pleasure to have y'all with me here today. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having us. We're excited about it.
Yes, thank you.
Well, it was a pleasure to meet y'all. We met at the Best Horse Practices Summit back in 2022, and I know I've had everybody from that deal on the podcast, but y'all really had y'all did a cow working clinic on the Friday of it, and I would just say absolutely pleasantly shocked and impressed at how well the two of you gelled together. Usually, if you were to put a husband and a wife in a working horses or cattle situation, that would be a recipe for divorce, and yet you two seem to make it go the other direction. So big kudos on that.
Oh. It's a work in progress.
I admire your honesty there. Well, we start off everybody with the icebreaker questions. Just to let y'all know, these are for points, so you want to be on your A game for prizes at the end. So, what is your favorite fast food?
Gas station pizza.
Okay. I heard the other day, the Hunt Brothers pizza that they have in every gas station.
That
is actually That's the largest pizza chain in the United States. It's bigger than Pizza Hut, Domino's, Papa John. That is the largest pizza chain in the U.S. How about that?
Yeah.
How about you, Christine?
Yeah, I think anywhere that's got like chicken strips, that's my go-to. So I don't know. I mean, like Chick-fil-A, and then what's the other one that we go to? We really don't. Zaxby's. Yeah, I'll go to. So yeah, we really eat. We're on the farm all day, so most of the time I get chicken salad from the local health food store, and that's what I'm eating for lunch.
And at supper, we have our own beef. So
yeah, that's right. We eat Big Creek beef for supper.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Right lead or left lead? So I kind of find everybody, just like they're right-handed or left-handed, they have a particular lead that they have an easier time riding and departing into. Do y'all find that true in your riding?
Absolutely.
From my perspective, it's a left lead because I team rope a lot.
Okay. That makes sense. Yes, sir.
So mine is the left lead, although we acquired a mare who loves to pick up her right lead. So I ride her, or I try to lope her as much as I can, so it works out to balance things out where I'm comfortable really picking up that right lead.
Would you say as a rider that your hands or your legs are better? So we kind of all have one route we go where we're naturally feel like we're more talented with our hands or our feet. So which would you pick?
Mine is definitely my legs. I mean, I've worked for a long time to keep quiet, smooth hands, but the leg is always what adds the brilliance to the horses that I ride, the maneuvers that I want. My leg is always what brings that all together.
From my perspective, I'd say it's kind of a combination. Over the years, I've tried to hone myself to where everything works in conjunction, if that makes sense. So I use a lot of seat and leg and hands kind of similarly at the same time. And I've had to hone myself for years trying to get everything where it's connected. But I'd say probably all parts equally for the most part because I've worked on it so much.
Okay. What is your coffee order? So how do y'all like coffee? I'm assuming y'all are big coffee drinkers. Maybe I'm wrong there. If you got another favorite beverage, that'll be fine too.
Yeah, well, I am the ultimate coffee snob. If I go to if I'm out and about, I'll usually have a cold brew, and I like the cream in it. But in the mornings, I'm black coffee, hot black coffee of the mornings, cold brew in the afternoon.
Pretty much, I like cold coffee, so I drink, and I like it to buy it in a bottle because it's the same. I don't want to go to a coffee shop because I don't know who the baristas are and how good they are.
All right. What is your favorite book or movie? Could be horse related, doesn't have to be horse related, but
I'd say The Rounders with Henry Fonda and Glenn Ford. I think that was a pretty cool old movie. I like that movie.
okay.
Mine would have to be fried green tomatoes.
Okay. I don't know that I have seen that one, but I think I know what you're talking about. Yes, ma'am. If you had to pick cold showers or cold food forever, what would you pick?
Cold food.
Okay.
Maybe ask him why.
Because I lived on cold food for years. I can do good on it.
Well, from my perspective, when he was out rodeoing, he's busted his body all up. So he's like sore on a daily basis now. So he needs the hot showers.
It gets me moving in the morning. Let's put it that way.
Uh-huh. So that actually ties in real well with the next, or let me finish up. Christine, for you, cold food or cold shower?
Oh yeah, I gotta go the cold shower route. I was raised in the north, so I'm okay with the cold. But hot food, it's an essential. I like it at a certain temperature because that's for me, that's where the flavors are at, the texture, all of that is when it's on the hot side.
All right. So the next question, where in your body are you sore right now? So I guess Mike will let you start that one off.
Well, somewhere between the sole
everywhere
of
is an acceptable answer.
Yeah, between the sole of my boots and the top of my hat. That's about
Oh, Christine?
Usually lower back, and that's just from years of labor. I've worked in hay fields, picking up bales from the ground, loading them up, and then unloading, stacking, cleaning stalls, wheelbarrows. So lower back is always a little bit of a touchy area for me. I've got to do maintenance there.
Okay. If not for a horseman or cattleman or however y'all would describe what you do, what would you have been?
If I had any musical talent, I'd probably play the honky tonks.
Okay.
I'd say I would have maybe gone into photography, journalism.
Okay, I could see that. If y'all can't tell yet, this is definitely one of those kind of opposites attract marriages here. Christine's is sweet and pure and nice, and Mike's the kind of guy you call to help you dig up a body that you got to in the morning and you don't know what to do with, right?
That's right.
You get the picture.
Okay. Do you have any favorite words of wisdom? So any particular little saying that comes up for you regularly, or you remind yourself, or could be a Bible quote, anything like that?
There's a couple. I can do all things through Christ that strengthen me. And the other thing I tell people, from a cow working experience and a ranching experience with horses, is do what you got to do to get done what you got to get done, and then you can fix stuff a little bit later. So,
yeah.
I think for me, it's take the time it takes. And that just comes from spending time with weanlings, yearlings, 2-year-olds in their colt starting phases. Is you get there quicker by going slow. And I would say it's the same when you're teaching people how to ride, is everybody learns differently. So you're going to just take the time it takes for them to get the fundamentals right. And then you grow from there. So like just everywhere in my life, I just feel like that's just a common thing that floats in my mind. I'm always reminded of the goodness in that because it does work.
Okay. What is your least favorite barn chore?
Cleaning stalls.
Okay.
Maybe scrubbing water buckets.
I think one of my past guests picked that as their favorite barn chore, which is actually the next question. What's your favorite barn chore?
I love cleaning stalls.
Just feeding and handling the horses, just, weeding in and out. I guess that would be it.
Kind of checking on everything and just getting an eye on it, making sure it's good. Huh?
Yep, that's it.
What is the best smell in the barn?
Oh, fresh hay, fresh cut hay, baled hay.
For me, from just a child, it was always a smell of sweet feed, and I actually like the smell of wet saddle blankets. It brings comfort to me because that's how I grew up.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Mare, stallion, or gelding? Do y'all have any particular preference there of what you would pick?
Mare. I'm a mare gal. I love the fire in the mare. I love the challenge that they present. I just feel like you work harder, but what you attain when it's good, instead of giving 100%, they give 110%. So I'm okay to deal with the bad days in order to get the extraordinary days.
For me, it doesn't make a lot of difference. I ride all of them. I'm one of the few cowboys around here that actually don't mind riding a mare if she's a good one. I don't have a lot of use for counterfeit anything, so whatever I ride's got to be pretty good. But I'm kind of equal opportunity guy.
Okay. Are you decisive or indecisive?
Decisive.
Decisive.
Okay. So that kind of sounded like on a scale of 1 to 10, Mike's a 10 decisive and Christine's an 8 decisive, something like that.
Yeah, there probably is that like 10% where like the girl brain kicks in and I'm like, do I really want to wear this or do I want to wear that? But when it comes to business, I really try to be decisive, and make decisions because, and then of course, when you're in stock, whether it's cattle or horses, you have to be decisive because it could mean your life or somebody else's life or, a lot of times when you're training, there are moments of opportunity and you have to be decisive and use those moments to your advantage or they're gone. So, yeah, I really try to trend to be on the decisive side.
I often tell people that there's no crawfish in my genetics, so there's no backup. God put me with a lot of forward gears and no reverse, which that's sometimes not always great.
Maybe a scar or two to prove that point a little bit. Huh?
Absolutely. Yep.
Could you name what you believe to be the most important quality needed to be a great horseman?
Tenacity and patience.
Okay.
I'd say the same. Patience being number one, tenacity being second. In my world, that's kind of how I trend, is that tenacity is good, but tenacity can also stir up a lot of trouble in a horse. But if you have patience first and then you can back it up with the follow through, which that's tenacity to me, is just having the follow through. It's a great formula.
Okay. This next one's kind of a two-parter. Is there anything that people do with horses, maybe another discipline or something like that, that you have not done that you would like to try?
I've been pretty versatile over years and tried about everything, and I've come to the point where I admire, regardless of the discipline, the horsemanship that's involved in all those disciplines. So I've tried a lot of it. I can't think of anything that I really would like to try at this point. Of course, I'm getting some age on me, so I don't know if I physically want to try a lot of that stuff.
I think that I would love to take some lessons, some dressage lessons on like a Lusitano or an Andalusian, and just really feel that, the suspension and the collection that comes very natural to those horses. I think I would love, if I had time to dedicate to that, I would love to master that.
Okay. Morning or evening?
You want me to answer for her? I can tell you it's not morning. For me, I'm both. I can be up early and I can be out up to the middle of the night, and I'm pretty equal. But for her, I think it's going to have to be night.
That's the black coffee of the morning, right? I need to. If I could do it intravenously, I would, because I wake up really slow in the morning. And I've wished that I was not that way, because it doesn't work out for a lifestyle. Like, I really would love to get up and going really early and be like full of energy. But I'm just not. It takes me a little bit to get cranking. But once I get going, I'm good, and I'm really productive. It just takes me a while to get there.
Oh, fair enough. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Yeah, dogs for sure. Although I've got a story to tell. I got some barn cats, and the barn cat ended up by being a part-time house cat, and I'm not a cat person, but for some reason, because this thing was so ornery, I took a liking to her because she was a challenge. She was a challenge to me. So we did kind of keep her around. She was a great mouser, so it won my affections a little bit.
On the dog end, is there any particular breed that y'all favor?
We like the working dogs. Chris is a big blue heeler person. I kind of like the heelers and the border collie type dogs, stuff like that.
I think there's more of a division there than people realize. Go ahead, Christine. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I'm blue heeler and Jack Russell Terrier. I've gotten along really well with them. I would say this, that if I can create the right scenario, it's get the blue heeler pup when it's young, and then you get it working with you, like as soon as it's ready to just, be taught commands, to just bring them right along and draw some pretty clear lines with boundaries, and they will learn it, but they've got to be with you every day. And I understand that blue heelers are not an everybody kind of dog. And a lot of people get in wrecks with blue heelers and they get a bad rap. So I say get them while they're young. And the ones that I've raised, they've been phenomenal dogs, and they actually helped me get my job done. The ones that I had trouble with were always the ones that I adopted later in life. Maybe if I got them as a year old, I had terrible trouble with them. And I always joke and laugh that when I try to direct those dogs, they'd look over at me and say, "You're not my real mama." They kind of like the stepmother treatment, right? And I just couldn't. I ended up by not keeping them just because I couldn't get done what I needed done. They caused more trouble than they were help. So
if you heard Chris there, Jack Russell and blue heeler, does that tell you anything about her temperament?
Yeah, a lot. Yes, sir. That's what I was going to say. Border collies are dogs that you can't yell at, and blue heelers and Jack Russells are dogs that you have to yell at, right? So you kind of have to.
There you go.
Set those boundaries. Absolutely. Bay or sorrel? Y'all have a preferred color, or doesn't really matter?
Broke.
Okay.
But what are you attracted to? I can answer this for him.
Stocking-legged sorrels.
Yeah. He loves a stocking-legged sorrel horse. Yeah. Yeah.
How about?
I'm equal parts. I mean, I am. I've owned a lot of sorrel horses. I've owned very few bay horses, but horses have kind of entered my life sometimes by default. I didn't always go like pick them. I either bred them and kept them. Not necessarily gone out and bought a horse of a certain color. If it's a bay, it's better be a deep colored bay. Those would get my attention. A really dark colored bay is pretty wild to me.
So I'll tell you, this is one of those questions that I have been pretty astounded by. I kind of thought it was a throwaway question just in the middle of the deal to break the ice, but it is something like 9-1 people preferring bay horses. And I thought it would be a 50-50. So Mike, you're one of the few people that has said stocking-legged sorrel. Mm-hmm. It is almost everybody says bay horse, and I don't get it. I'm not a bay horse guy myself, but anyway, I had no idea there was such a strong preference for bays out there in the world. So another two-parter. If there are good essential oils, does that also mean that there must be evil essential oils?
Well, if I go to this gas station, diesel fuel is an evil essential oil when it's over $3 a gallon.
How funny. So, you're kind of hitting on a subject that I was and still am very passionate about. So I have studied essential oils, and I'm not talking about bacon grease either. So, what I've learned about essential oils is that it really depends on the quality of plant that you choose to derive, pull the oils out of. So that being said, a good company will test the oils for potency. So then they aren't created equal, right? Because if you have a plant that's not being raised in the right environment, it's probably not going to be that potent if you're going to use it medicinally. And then, of course, a good company would check for purity. In my mind, what would determine whether it's a good or a bad oil is that there are companies that will take maybe an essential oil, but they will add perfume to them. So then it's really or a filler. And when you start studying it, there are a lot of companies that add fillers and they add, essences like chemical essences. So, if you're using essential oils medicinally, then yeah, you probably have to check out the companies and how they source the oil and the plants.
You didn't know you was going to get a PhD thesis on that.
No, that actually, since I know we're going to be talking a lot about food and agriculture and that kind of thing, that brings up a little point. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast, but one of my hobbies is I'm a beekeeper. And so I don't have a lot of hives or anything. I actually like catching wild bees and doing removals from places and stuff. But honey is the only food that doesn't go bad. It can literally be thousands of years old. They found honey in Egyptian pyramids that's still perfectly fine. And so it preserves in a way nothing else does. And it is also the most, I don't know how to say this correctly, but in terms of products that are faked or there's fraudulent, the number one worldwide most fraudulent faked product is honey. So the thing that never goes bad, never spoils, never is the most faked food out there for whatever reason. So I've always found that interesting.
That's why we buy local. We know where it comes from.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. We will let you get onto that soapbox later on too. Don't worry. We'll spend plenty of time on that. So here's kind of with the essential oils question there. Would you agree that the opposite of holy water is hot dog water?
I would probably agree with that. Yeah, sure.
That's what they should do for some of these protests and stuff. If they had some of those like super soaker water guns filled with hot dog water and you just saturate the crowd, like those vegans would disappear, right? I mean, they would just be repellent in a really interesting way.
Absolutely.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
No, I don't think so either.
It belongs in a pina colada.
I like that. Yes, ma'am. That is another one of those questions. You would not believe how strong some people have feelings on the pineapple on pizza. Like that's a fighting question in the wrong company. That's a big deal.
It is. It is.
Thoughts or feelings? Would you consider yourself more a cerebral, logical, rational at all cost person, or a seat of your pants, follow the gut feeling, that kind of a person? Which way would y'all go?
I'm probably follow my gut. I'd like to say I'm a thoughtful person, but I'm Scottish heritage, so I can anger pretty quickly, So yeah, I'd say emotion unless money's involved.
Okay.
I think I'm equal parts. I mean, there's part of me that will, that is a kind of fly by the seat of my pants kind of a gal. I think the older that I've gotten, I've really gotten a little more pensive about things. And I say that I'm probably equal parts my mother and my father. So so it's both. I'm really both of them. I'm equal parts of that. I love adventure and can make quick decisions at times and just go. And then other times I'm deep in thought and really give things great consideration.
It's like being married to Buddha with her, because nothing rocks her world. I mean, the house roof could blow off and she's like, oh, well, that's terrible. Where it's literally like being married to Buddha here.
Well, cool. That's what keeps life interesting, right? The two opposite people that marry one another, and there you go. Well, let me. That's going to be the final question. So let me tabulate y'all's score here. So y'all have gotten 3,848 points, which is the highest score we've ever had on the lightning round question. So congratulations, y'all are the ultimate champions, which entitles y'all to either an awkward silence or a genuine compliment, your choice.
Oh, we'll just do the compliment. We don't get like turtle wax or rice-a-roni with that or something.
No, no turtle wax, I'm afraid. With the bees, I might could hook something up with some beeswax there, but
beeswax.
Well, I would have to say that this was what intrigued me about y'all was when I did two of you worked together, and I've done some co-teaching, and I know that can be very difficult. Sometimes they say something that sparks something off in your head, but there's not you want to jump in and you can't, and just the respect that you both showed one another in that instance, it really struck me. It really, really did. Not that the quality of the teaching was suspect or anything like that, but that was really the overwhelming thing that I took away from that was how respectful the two of you were co-teaching like that. It left a mark on me. It's something to aspire to in any marriage, I think. And so I did want to talk with y'all a little bit about that, how y'all manage that. And because I think any married couple that's ever worked cattle together will understand exactly what a test of marriage that could be. And y'all seem to be just knocking a home run with it. So why don't we start off with that?
Well, I think a big part of it is we have a great respect for each other. We don't always agree on everything. The way she works horses sometimes is different than I. She'll do things a little bit more slower than I will sometimes. Sometimes I've got a job to do, but we have a great deal of respect for each other in the way we approach things. And the other thing, I think it's a God thing. It says the two become one. And I think we've really, we've turned our, this marriage over to God, and we really appreciate each other. And I think that that has allowed us to get to a different level. And I think if people would step back and kind of step into that realm and really treat each other with the respect that we're supposed to treat each other, and then understand that there's some value in differences. So I think we've been married for 7 years, and I think we had enough age on us and enough past experience in life that we were able to mesh those things together, and it's really been a tremendous journey for us.
Mm-hmm. For me, I the bottom line is like love covers over a multitude of sins, right? Like love is a great driving force to goodness. So when you let that guide your life and your heart and your thought patterns, then you do stop and think before you speak. And you start deciding what's important and what's not. What might you kind of push through and fight, so to speak, and what things do you just let slide off your back? And when you're in God, I think that Holy Spirit guides you in that. You might get the little tap on your shoulder and say, it's not a big deal, let it go. So how many fights would get diffused if you just let things go? Because at the end of the day, having your own way is not always a win. So I always tell my friends, why ruin your marriage over a gallon of milk? We always joke, like if, some guy leaves a gallon of milk out on the counter, I was like, you could choose to pick a fight over that. I'm like, why ruin your marriage, a good marriage, over a gallon of milk? Let it go, put it in the fridge, throw it in the trash, go on. And then beyond that, in my mind, what Mike and I are doing is it's a team effort, and you've got to keep the team on the up and up, right? With positivity. So you do have to govern yourself, and it is a discipline. But when you set your eyes on the end goal, then you work together to that end goal. So when we teach, the end goal is to help people become a little better with their horses and better with their cattle. So it's not about us, it's about helping people. And Mike has strengths that I don't have, and vice versa. So we allow ourselves to operate in our strengths, and it's not a competition. We bring our strengths in together, and then that's what makes that winning formula.
Well, that's very wise. One of the thoughts, and not that y'all are responsible for being the full representative of all married couples here, that I have, is that sometimes you get, well, let me back up on that. A whole lot of us in this community would tend more on the introverted side, and there's very much an attraction to the fact that I'm going to be on a horse today and nobody's going to talk to me for the next 7 hours and I get to have quiet time and enjoy my own thoughts. And then so you take people like that and then you glue them together, and sometimes you can't get away from one another for that time that you need to yourself. So do y'all ever have that sort of thing where you just look at the other and say, I love you, but I need you to not say another word for the next 3 hours while I decompress right now, and just kind of, y'all ever have those sorts of moments? Not that I'm accusing you of both being introverts. I'm just saying it would be very common in this particular industry that we're in. So
I think for the most part, we do that. We work together, but we're not always together when we're working, if that makes sense. I mean, this, it's a pretty sizable ranch. Lots of times I've got other things I've got to be doing. I got to be tending the cattle. I got to be bush hogging, cutting hay. So while we're together part of the day, a big portion of the day, I have to go do something. She has to go do something, and we'll come back together. And, we're confident enough that we can do our own thing and not have to be glued together.
And what's interesting is that you're right. Both Mike and I need that solitude. It's kind of how we refuel. We don't, I find that when we're around people all day long, it's a very draining. So we do seek that. We retreat. What's interesting is that he and I can go do that together. That we'll saddle up and go ride through the cows, and we won't say one word to each other. So sometimes we can be together and still have that. And like he said, there are days where he's on one side of the farm, I'm on the other. He's checking cows, working cattle, and I'm with mares and babies, and we'll go hours and hours and not see each other. So it works out great. It gives us the balance that we need.
I will say too, since you brought that up, I was following your journey with foaling this spring, Christine, and I kind of did. You got yourself a little makeup apartment in the barn there, and bringing the mares up and giving updates on them and everything, and that was, I know what a pain that can be, and when you haven't slept for 8 days, getting up and checking on this dang mare that's late foaling and all, and so you kept pretty good spirits and kept it fun, and I don't know if that adds to your sanity through that period or not, but I enjoyed keeping up with that with you.
Well, I lost some sanity during that period. I was here for 30 nights in a row, and up every hour on the hour, and then work all day, and I was not pleasant. That was at the end of that process. Let's put it that way.
Well, I could certainly understand that. I can go without sleep, but I can't necessarily be fun to be around without sleep. It's better to let me work by myself in those periods for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, why don't y'all tell us a little bit about the operation, where y'all are at, and how many acres and cows and horses, and kind of give us the 101 version of what y'all have going on there.
Well, basically, we're just a little bit east of Lexington, Kentucky, in a little place called North Middletown. It's in Bourbon County Parish. We're kind of in thoroughbred country. we're a little bit unique in the aspect of we're a cow-calf operation. We're 320 acres. We run about 100 mama cows, primarily commercial Black Angus type cattle. We market most of those, a portion of those through the sale barn. We do have a kind of a branded beef program that we go directly to the consumers with. So we have that aspect of the business. And that requires putting our own hay up and feed, and that's a job in itself. Then we keep roughly 30 horses around here. A portion of those will be brood mares, and we raise babies. We're pretty particular on our brood mares. We want mares that's pretty well bred, and then we want mares that is actually got a brain and has done something, because we think a great portion of these foals influence is environmental. So if we have a mare that's got a great attitude and work ethic, we think that passes on to the baby. Then we cross those back over to our stud that has tremendous work ethic and athletic ability and a lot of trainability. So, and we keep about 7 or 8 brood mares, no more than that. We offer those babies to the public. We might keep 1 or 2 for ourselves. Then we keep a few horses for the lesson program, Chris's lesson program, that she does riding lessons with. And then I keep a few team roping horses around here. So that's kind of in a nutshell. We do the clinics on the weekend. We usually two a month or something like that. Cow horse clinics. We'll do a ranch roping clinic, maybe a breakaway. And we get a lot of participation. They're generally sold out. We want people to succeed at this, so we really we take maybe 10 or 12 people for our clinics, because we want to have one-on-one time with them, and we want to do it in a manner that builds confidence and doesn't go over their head. So that's our goal, is to build horsemen and encourage people.
Mm-hmm.
And you also are standing a stallion there. Would you like to tell us a little bit about him?
Yes, I had a deal with South Korea. It's been several years ago. They wanted us to buy some quarter horse brood mares and ship to South Korea, and some studs. So I bought 50 mares, and I started buying studs for him. I run across this stud and I bought him, and he was a nice stud, but he was slated to go to South Korea. I shipped the mares, and they didn't buy any more studs. So I called them and asked what they were going to do with that stud. And they said, well, we'd like to sell him. And I made a bid and wound up getting him. And when I did, I knew he was really not bred nice, but I hadn't looked at his show record. When I looked at his show record, he had a pretty significant show record. And I thought, I'm going to take him to roping. So I loaded him up, took him to roping, and this dude was phenomenal. You can tie him with a group of mares, never know he's a stud, go do a day's work. Just a tremendous attitude. So I started crossing him over on mares, and his babies have tremendous work ethic, and the trainability is pretty phenomenal. So I have a lot of trainers calling, wanting these horses now, because I've kind of promoted him and put him in the right places with a lot of rope horse trainers. And he's got horses that are roping. He's got some that's running barrels. He's not really a barrel horse, but he's putting some barrel horses on the ground, and just a tremendous amount of trainability. And we've crossed him over some really nice bred mares. And, we want a horse that first of all has trainability, has athletic ability. And the other thing is we want longevity. We want some bone structure on those horses. And he's 20 now, and we're still roping off of him, and he's sound, and just been a tremendous horse for us.
Okay. And his name's Pepto Shine, right?
Yeah, he is a grandson of Pepto Small on the top side, and Shining Spark on the bottom side, and got a little Freckles Playboy in there. So, yeah, he's a pretty nice bred horse, and just a pretty nice horse to be around.
Well, very good. And then you said y'all are running mostly Angus type commercial cattle and about 100 headwood, and y'all are doing some local sales, I guess, where people can buy a quarter and a half of beef from y'all and that sort of thing. Or would you tell us a little bit about that side of it?
Well, when COVID started, we had some people wanting some got hard. They were worried about supermarkets and stuff like that. So we started this business in 2019 by default. And we usually harvest 2 every month, sometimes 3, and we have since 2019, offer it to the public. So we raise these cattle. I put them on a feed program. We usually take them to about 1,300 pounds. They're usually on feed, more than 120 days. And most everything that we have processed has been in the high choice to prime range. And all of our business has been pretty much repeat business. We don't do a whole lot of advertising. Once people have a really good product that's not a supermarket product and they really experience a good product, it sells itself. So it's been good for us, and it was a learning curve. We had to feed them outright, and it takes a little time, but we wanted to do it right, and everybody that's experienced that has come back to us.
I was going to ask you about that. So are y'all doing like a grass finished product, or are you pinning them up and running a little mini feedlot there at the barn, or how are y'all going about that? And I tell you what, I know you're a very knowledgeable cattleman. Would you mind defining a little bit of that stuff for us too? Because I think that we have a real big problem in this world of, we have a lot of these labels out there in the food world now of organic and things like that, and most people have no clue what those terms really actually mean. So within the cow world, we probably have like certified Angus beef, grass finished, all these sorts of terms. Would you mind kind of running just through the basics of what those things mean and what y'all are doing, how y'all are approaching that?
Well, basically, we call it an all natural product. We're not organic, and the reason we're not organic is because the government bureaucracy that you have to jump through with all that record keeping, it makes it just about impractical to do that. So we didn't do the organic route. We do the all natural route, and basically what that is we raise these cattle on our farm. We don't implant. Do we use antibiotics? I tell people, yeah, we do. It's animal husbandry. If an animal's sick, we're going to save it. If we got to treat pink eye, we're going to save it. When we do, we label that animal and say that he's, we've doctored him and he doesn't go into our program that's harvested. So we raise these cattle to weaning on grass and mama. And at that point in time, they'll go on feed. And we have kind of a what we call a grain on grass situation. They're not up in a real tight feed lot. They're kind of in an acre lot. There's some grass there, but we feed them a pretty high corn diet. So it's pretty much like a feed lot, but it's a little more, I think, healthier environment for the animal to have a little grass. So we do that. We take them up to about, like I said, 1,300 pounds to harvest them. So we have some people that want grass-fed, and we do grass-fed. The thing about grass-fed, and Chris and I talked about it, so for 100 years, a lot of our commercial cattle, like the Angus cattle, has been developed genetically to perform on feedlots. So I think, we've lost a little bit of the ability to perform on forages. There is some older breeds we find, and it sounds crazy, but a lot of the longhorn cattle hasn't been changed genetically for years. And if we do grass fed, we'll do like a longhorn cross with something, because they have the ability to marble on that forage more so than maybe some of the other breeds that we developed for feedlot. So that's for us, that's what works best for us. We have a good relationship with consumers. They want to come out to the farm sometime, and I'll take them around and show them what we do and how we grow our cattle. We try to provide a good, solid environment, because I think having an animal in a good environment is just a lot healthier. We don't overgraze our land. We could probably put more cattle, but we just think it's a healthier environment if we're not overstocked.
And in the world of like grass-fed beef versus a grain-fed product, could you walk up to a meat case and look at 2 ribeyes and visually tell the difference? You mentioned feeding a lot of corn. Is there a specific reason for that, or a timeline that's involved there, or anything?
Just intermuscular marbling, for the most part. When I see a grass fed, I can usually pick that out because there's not as much muscular marbling in those. It's a little more of a red meat. From my perspective, it has a little bit more of a gamey flavor that I can see, where the corn-fed cattle will have a little more intermuscular fat. For me, it's a little different. There's a texture and a flavor difference. I personally like grain-fed, but everybody has their choices, So I personally like a good grain-fed product. My diet, I worked for years for a feed company and do some consulting. So I keep about 75 or 80% of my ration in corn. And you got to be careful how you feed that because you can overfeed that. But I try to bring them on and build them up. That way I get that marbling and get that flavor and that tenderness.
I'm in agreement with everything he's saying. He's spot on.
Well, I get one of the things and if you want to say this or you disagree with it, I could edit this up, but I was basically trying to get you to mention the white versus the yellow fat and the oxidation and that sort of thing, bleaching at 90 days with corn and all. Because I know there have been some people with the local butcher shops and all, they'll go in there and they'll see a steak or something cut and it's got yellow fat on it and it kind of turns them off. And I don't think they realize
Right.
that's what it actually looks like if you haven't put them on corn for 90 days and everything. So I'll pitch it to you. You can, or you don't even have to say it, but I guess that was what I was aiming at there.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm absolutely in agreement with that. And people are kind of used to seeing what they see in the supermarket. They don't understand the yellow fat. They don't understand how it cooks up and stuff like that. And like I said, everybody's got a personal preference. For me, it's grain fed, but I think the majority of consumers want to see that white fat instead of the yellow fat. And, we see that with a lot of the Jersey cattle will have a yellow fat, the dairy-based cattle and stuff like that, and people are completely turned off. But in reality, when you feed those out, they'll still have a little bit of yellow fat, but the marbling and the flavor's there, And it's just like organic fruit as opposed to sprayed fruit. A lot of people say they want organic, but they don't want a bug hole in it or something like that. You got to understand there's trade-offs,
Absolutely. I think this is probably a good time for us to pay the bills and get in here with our sponsor for this episode. So let me jump off and do that real quick. And I found a good sponsor for y'all's episode. This one is covered by the Greater Midwest Cricket Council and Jiminy's Cricket Ranch. When you think ranching, you probably have pictures in your head of green fields dotted with cattle, sheep, or goats. Maybe there's a cowboy on a horse idling along with the herd. Well, we're here to change that picture. Cricket ranching is the wave of the future. Crickets are a sustainable protein source that contains more protein, iron, vitamins, and fiber than beef by weight. Cricket protein is also considered a complete protein because it contains all 9 essential amino acids, including branched chain amino acids like leucine, which are important for muscle growth and strengthening. Crickets are also a good source of trace minerals like zinc, copper, and manganese. Did you know that for every quarter cup of cornmeal, the FDA allows an average of 1 or more whole insects, 2 or more rodent hairs, and 50 or more insect fragments, or 1 or more fragments of rodent dung? Asparagus can contain 40 or more scary-looking but teensy thrips for every quarter pound. You have been eating insects for years and didn't even know it. It's time to end animal and industrial agriculture as we know it and embrace the insects with all of their arms and antennae. Why waste your time, energy, and other resources trying to catch the fish when you could just eat the bait? Jiminy's Cricket Farm and Greater Midwest Cricket Council invite you to try some at our new restaurant opening soon in Kansas City, Chirps. All right. So we've paid the bills there. I feel a little bit better. I hope y'all don't take any offense, but they made me a good offer on running that ad here. So,
hey, we might develop some horses for sorting crickets. I don't know. It might be a whole new market.
Never know. Well, why don't we talk horses a little bit more and y'all kind of tell us a little bit more about your background in horses. So, Mike, for instance, grew up riding rough stock in rodeo, and a lot of people might not know this, but there's always a kind of a rub between rough stock riders and ropers, and now you've gone to the dark side, Mike. So how did that transition in your life?
Well, kind of by necessity. I grew up, like I said, riding horses, and when I was a kid, my dad would take me to rodeos, and my grandfather had a bunch of little old bottle calves in the barn. When I was a kid, he'd take me down there and tie me on those calves, and just thought it was hilarious, watch them calves buck around. And I kind of took a liking to it. And when I was 15, I bought my first bareback rigging and bull rope, and started entering, kind of at the local levels, and worked my way up. And I had a college career, went to the college finals, had my PRCA card, went to the Great Lakes Circuit finals 5 times, and spent, I'd go to 60 to 70 rodeos a year, working the rough stock in. I've always roped a little bit. So from 1979 to 1994, I spent most of the time riding the rough stock. I quit bull riding in 85, and mainly focused on saddle bronc riding until about 94, and a couple of little incidents in 94 paralyzed me, and I had to have back surgery. And they told me I'd never be able to ride a horse again, and that lasted 3 or 4 months. And I figured God made me to ride a horse, so I stepped back on and kind of went to roping and judging rodeos, and I've roped and judged rodeos since then. So that was kind of my career. And out of that rodeo career, I would get the phone call, "Are you Mike Stokley that rides bucking horses?" Well, that usually meant they had a colt that bucked and they wanted somebody to ride it out. So I started training horses, and they never sent me the good ones, So that's kind of how I started training horses, is by default. People want me to ride the ones that weren't favorable.
I had a lot of similar experiences myself there. I was riding bulls and all as a young guy, and I recognized early in my 20s that whenever somebody called me with the odd horse and I didn't know them or anything to ride, it was going to be a rough deal. And I was kind of like, y'all know you could bring them to me before they've bucked 5 or 6 people off, right? I mean, I could get that sorted in a different way before it's a bad thing. But anyway, well, how about you, Miss Christine?
As far as horses go, what really accelerated me into learning more was buying a problem horse. For one, is that it humbled me, and it made me know or figure out that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. And that's what made me start chasing the horsemanship, because with the buckaroo vaquero style horsemanship, like, the Ray Hunt, Tom Dorrance type horsemanship, what comes with it is the philosophy of how to approach the horse and how to get them through these difficult areas of their life. And, they really made me look at the emotion of the horse, the how to maintain respect and trust in that animal, and how to grow that. So my journey really starts with that horse. He was really fast. He had no stop on him. And at times that became very dangerous. He was beautiful to look at, which is why I bought him. But as I started trying to do more with him, it was really hard because of what these other people had set in him. He's one of the few horses that I had ever ridden that actually put water in my eyes, because he travels so fast. And the tears, the water would run straight above my ear and not downward when I was on him. But anyhow, that's what got things going. And then I ran into a man that had ridden with Ray Hunt, and he taught me how to start colts. And then he talked about the more intricate things of the horse, just the deeper stuff. And from there, I just really grabbed a hold of that and just kept studying and learning. So I always say I'm a student of the horse. This is, in my mind, this is never going to end. I'm just going to keep learning. And when I'm 70 and 80, my plans are to have my saddle hoisted up into the rafters, and I'm going to lower my saddle down onto my horses, but I'm going to keep riding, and I'm going to still ride in the good saddles.
Well, I like that very much. Yes, ma'am. As the saying goes, I pray silently every night that God never lets me know the last time I ride a horse, right?
That's right. That's right.
Do that as long as you possibly can. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
So where does that y'all have the horse program now at your ranch? We talked a little bit about the breeding side, but the clinics and the women's groups and the cowgirl retreats and all of that, why don't y'all get into and private lessons, kind of give us a little roadmap of what that looks like, how you start people off riding and all of it.
Yeah. When people sign on for lessons, one of the first things that I start teaching them when I set them on a horse is how to move with that animal, how to let their seat move. And then for them to start developing the feel. So when you first sit people on a horse, they're thinking very mechanically, because we drive cars, we ride bicycles. So everything has a steering wheel. And when they first sit on a horse, that's their expectation of how this is going to go down. So I've got to dispel that myth and start teaching them about the feet, and that we're after the feet and the ribs and the hindquarters, and really try to pull them away from the reins, because everybody's really good at pulling on horses, because they just handle the head and the mouth like a steering wheel. So my goal is really to get them deeper, quicker. So I'm teaching them a lot about moving with that horse. We're teaching them about their legs very early on. In fact, I'll talk about legs like 80% of the time and really focus on the hands for 20, because like I said, the hands always come using hands is very natural, and that's everybody's go-to. So I kind of teach backwards. I'm going to teach them a whole lot more about seat and legs, and then hands last. And it's preserved a lot my lesson horses, where when I was younger and teaching, I taught hands first. And my horses had a harder time. They struggled a lot more. So time has really helped me hone that. Of course, and anybody that does anything for any length of time gets better the longer they do it, because you start observing what works and what doesn't work. So, you're just really just teaching an incrementalism, just add every time they come, just adding a little something else to them. I don't cram everything in them. I was like, bring me your kid, give me 2 years with them, because there's so much to know about the horse. And if you're going to do it well, there's lots of people who throw kids on horses, or even adults do this, and they're chasing the end game. But what happens is they jump up the ladder way too quick, so that they've missed some rungs in the ladder. They've missed some steps, and then later on, the horse just craps out on them. It just quits them. So if you can really teach people how to get horses with you and understanding the cues, which is your communication, if you just teach people how to communicate with them through legs and hands, you just grow a great partnership. And those people also can maintain a horse by themselves without an instructor. If I do my job, then there'll be a day they don't need me. And my goal is that they surpass me. It's always my goal. It's like, I want them to be better than I am. So there are times where I'll bring a student to a certain place, and then I'll move them on to a different trainer. I'll say, go ride with them. Take what you know, now add maybe, a level of performance to what you know. So then you get riders that are like, I really admire Nick Dowers and his journey, because he comes from that horsemanship world, and then he entered the performance horse world, and then he married the two. So he can get a horse doing incredible things at a very high level, but he doesn't jeopardize the horse's will, his willingness, and his spirit, and the partnership. And I was like, I tip my hat to that. That's well done. So that's my goal with the people that I bring up.
I think part of the deal from my perspective is everybody has an expectation, especially on the cow working side or the roping side of things. They'll watch a cut and then they'll see a horse that's just, extremely athletic and it's really quick and snappy. Or they'll watch a team roping and they're roping in 4 seconds, and they come here with an expectation, and I have to humble them and explain to them, yes, you've seen that guy at a rodeo rope in 4 seconds, but you didn't see the week before when he's in the practice pen every day, roping slow cattle, teaching his horse to rate, and just doing the slow, dry work that it takes to build those horses, So you got to dial them back a little bit, and you got to give them the information, and then you got to teach them how to read the cattle and understand that, you can't be fast until you're slow. And you have to build confidence in that horse, or you'll burn them out. So from my perspective, it's kind of dialing things back and giving them the understanding of, those guys that are in the spotlight are there because they've done their due diligence and their slow work, and it's the 5 days prior to that weekend that is the foundation of success for the self and their horses.
I think the other thing that's very important to let people know is to not fear failure. That not everything that you're going to do is something that you're going to ace at the first try. And as you're learning with horses, there are some things that may not work well or right. You might not get it, but because it's not working right, some people get very discouraged, and some people even quit riding because they have a fear of failure. But failure is going to be your greatest teacher, because it's going to make you look at all the details of why is it not working, and then what can I do to adjust myself so that it does start working. And when you go through that process, you're really learning, man. You really get a hold of the good stuff. So in the program, I always encourage people, hey, don't quit, don't stop here, because this dark hour is the hour that is right before the light will show up. At the darkest hour is always before dawn. So just hang in there. It will get better, but what you get will be your greatest gain.
When I asked y'all both what was required to be a good horseman, y'all's answer was patience and tenacity. And patience is the part that you have to offer the horse, and tenacity is the part you got to have for yourself, or you're not going to keep doing this, because it's hard, it's frustrating, you're going to fail. And if you don't have the tenacity to keep going, you won't be doing this for very long. Yes, ma'am.
That's right.
Also on the expectations, I really liked what y'all said. One of my least favorite phone calls to get is the one where, hey, I've got a 7-year-old daughter and I want you to teach her how to do better at barrels and poles. And my first thought is, well, how about we learn how to ride before we learn how to go fast? Can this kid do riding well is not falling off between point A and point
That's right.
B, because maybe rocketing with lots of fast turns is so. Within y'all's lesson program, so you've mentioned that you have lesson horses, but I would imagine for clinics and things, most of the time that's people bring in their own horse. So how do y'all work that out? Is most of it people on their own horse, or most of the time are y'all providing the horse, or what?
We want them to bring their own horse because a lot of them don't have the skill set. Most of our horses are what I call older ranch horses that are pretty solid, and when Chris gives lessons, she teaches people, basically the cue and how to communicate with those horses. And those horses, because they are home pretty good, will get pretty frustrated if they get mixed signals. So we encourage people to bring their own horses. And then we're very cautious, and we will evaluate their horse during the clinic. We're not going to put anybody over their head. Our goal is at the beginning of the clinic, we tell people, if you don't feel safe, tee things up, and we'll make it right. We've got all day. We want you to learn. Lots of times we'll have an anchor horse. If a horse is a little bit bothered, we'll take that anchor horse and ride in with them and try to build confidence. So while we're teaching people, we also are very aware, and we want that horse to have a good experience. Also, we get a lot of people that come here from English riding barns, dressage barns that are cross training, that's never seen a cow. And so we're very aware of the horse's needs. And like I said, we'll use an anchor horse to kind of build that horse. And most of the time, I have to say, it's amazing to watch some of these horses. They'll come in here with some anxiety, and when they leave here, they've really let down because we've done it in a manner that we didn't push them to the part where they were anxious. We've tried to dial it back and let them have a good experience too.
I like that a lot. You kind of talking about expectations and people coming on their own horse. I do cow clinics as well, and I have this memory of a lady, and I didn't realize this. She came kind of with a group of friends. There's about 4 of them that were all together, and she's riding this horse, and they go to work in cattle, and she says at lunch, she'd already had her turn working cattle several times. We're about to go to lunch, and she walks over there to me and she says, I just want you to know that I would really like for you to work with me on loping this horse. I've never loped this horse before. And I said, what do you mean? You just loped 8 times chasing that cow out there. And she said, I did? I said, yes, ma'am. That horse was loping a whole bunch. You loped over here and you stopped and turned and you loped back over there. And like, you just loped a bunch. And she said, well, I had no idea when we were loping. And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, the last time I tried to lope him, he bucked. And I said, that's kind of part of the beauty of cattle. It got you out of your own way and you didn't even know how much you had going on out there.
That's right.
Do y'all find, and I don't know if y'all do more clinics that deal with cattle or not. I have always really appreciated with cattle. Like you say, you get people that come from other disciplines. A lot of disciplines, there's kind of no surprises. In other words, you know that I'm going to go up to this point, and at that stage we're going to stop. So you can plan kind of your ride. Your horse can feel your body, plan to stop in 4 more strides or whatever. And one of the differences I don't think people understand about cattle, if they've never worked them before, is it requires a whole lot of right now, because you don't necessarily know a stop is coming up until the cow tells you that a stop is coming up. And now, whether your legs are prepared or you're in the right position or whatever, here is a stop and here is a turn. And I really find that's kind of one of the best things for a horse with working cattle, is it gives you that sense of right now. So what are some of the other advantages y'all would say when you get sort of the cross training people or the new people to come in work in cattle, some of the light bulbs y'all have seen go off or benefits that you've seen from that?
Well, I think a big portion of it, and what we usually do on our cattle working clinics, is we use a lot of diminished roping cattle that aren't real snappy, a little slower moving type cattle for that specific purpose, because a great deal of these horses aren't cow horses, so that the other thing is, a lot of people, especially in the dressage world, the English world, and even in the Western pleasure horse, most everything, even reining horses, are done inside an indoor arena. And they ride a lot of circles, and they're repetition. And you see a lot of those horses come in here with what I call the ringy tail syndrome, because they're just so tired and wore out with the boredom of that. So when we introduce a cow to them, what we find is it draws them, they're inquisitive. They want to know. And it's kind of like they're engaging. It's like kids going on a playground. And it kind of engages curiosity in those horses. And it kind of diminishes the ringy tail syndrome, because they actually have a purpose in front of them. So from our perspective, we kind of see that, it kind of that light bulb moment. And if people are working on getting the bend in a horse or whatever, they can do that without that horse really realizing that they're doing it, because they're kind of following a cow or doing something like that. So I think it disengages some of that stuff that frustrates them because it gives them something different to focus on.
What I have observed is that when people start working cattle, it also gives them a very good idea as to where their horse is at in its training. Because you're having to do those in the moment maneuvers, walk, stop, back, rollbacks, roll over itself, or walk, trot, stop, go, stop. And most horses that come just kind of have a gear, a certain speed, or they'll trot at a certain speed. And when you're riding endless circles and not working on a lot of transitions, then the horse in his mind is not being ridden with that expectation. So when I started seeing this, I changed up what we were doing. And before we ever brought the cattle in, we started working on horsemanship. And I took them through the paces. I'd have them walk as slow as you can walk. Now walk as fast as you can walk. Now trot. Now stop. And then we work on backing. And then we work on moving body parts, hindquarters, front quarters, leg yielding. And then started taking them into the herd and saying, now this is where you get to use all these maneuvers. Everything we just worked on. Now here's the reason. So we do their dry work, and then we go do it on cattle. And then people started connecting the dots. And I said, a lot of times I tell them, you're going to know what your homework is when you leave here today. You're going to know what your horse needs help with. And that's the beauty of working cattle, is that they will help you become better horsemen, but also to help your horse be the best horse that he can be. Whether you'll ever work cattle, whether you work them on a ranch or, in a show, these cattle will help you become better. So whatever you're doing, whether it's, and like you said, we have people from all walks of life. We get gaited horses, we get, your dressage, hunter jumper gals that come in, and everybody leaves a little bit better that day. And that's always the goal. So I love highlighting all of that is how you can improve your horse. And they come back, and because they see that you're engaging the horse in a very different way, because then the horse has a reason to do all the maneuvers that you're asking it to do because there's a cow in front of them. So it's pretty cool. And I've really enjoyed this part of the journey. As a teacher, I've enjoyed that part of the journey because the cattle really help you do your job.
So something y'all just said sort of triggered a little thought on my part that I like, and I would like to get into. If this is a little bit of a hot potato and y'all don't want to, then that's perfectly fine. But Mike had mentioned about boredom, and then Christine got into that too. And I really, I don't mean this in a derogatory or accusatory manner when I say this, but one of the big struggles that people have learning with horses is just the ability to read the horse. And if you don't really know what you're looking at, and especially if you have this romanticized version of everything, you can convince yourself that what you see is one thing when in reality it is something else. Yes. And so we kind of have this battle, I would say, over connection versus boredom. Everybody wants to connect with their horse, but there's a whole lot of people that have, like, I almost call them rituals. They'll get into these groundwork rituals where they got to do 20 minutes of this tab A and this lot B stuff before they ride every day and whatnot. And their horse is so resentful and bored and hates this, and they just have no idea of that. And so do y'all see very much of that kind of stuff of the really bored horse that kind of needs to get out? And I think too, like, you see some of these horses in Europe, and I'll say this particularly with the Spanish horses, some of those places, they'll have a barn with 50 stallions that are all really high level horses, and you watch them and they're all good minded and get along really well, and you don't see the tail ringing and the resentment, and they got that place on 8 acres or hectares or whatever the hell but a small place. Like, it's not real common over there where you have 300 acres you can go trail ride on. And I just can't, to me, the challenge there, if I had to train a horse to a high level and I only had 5 acres to play around on there, and I could not take that horse out and about and let him decompress and see some country and all, like, that would make that so much more challenging to me. What a blessing we have with all the land we have to ride on in the States is really something. So I'm not sure if I articulated a very, very good question in there or not, but maybe that brought up some thoughts for y'all.
Well, I think for the most part, people do get in what I call a ritual. They've got their and some of it, while, our horsemanship, we get all the videos and we get all the things on RFD TV and everything about horsemanship. And people, that's a good inlet. You know what I mean? But what you got to do is you've got to kind of break that up a little bit. Like, you've got to learn, and we live in a society that has more ability to communicate than any time in history. But we've lost one thing. We cannot read nonverbal communication skills. And you really need to read body language in horses, because the horse will tell you in his body language what he's thinking. So I'll pull a horse out every day, and I might put a saddle on him and I might lead him around. I might just ask him around the circle and watch if he steps under himself, how tight he is. He'll tell me where he's at. I might get on a horse and that I'm training, and let's say the first 10 minutes, he just does everything I ask him to do. I might pull up, loosen my saddle, and get off of him that day, because why do I want to create an environment to, especially on a training horse, where I've asked him so much that we got a problem now. So the other thing is, I think horses need to be out, just like we enjoy an environment. Sometimes, even if you've got a high level performance horse, maybe you'll just pull a light cinch on him and go take a trail ride, and let him have a little letdown time. So I think, and then understanding the dynamics of a herd. I think it's important that horses run with horses if possible. There's certain advantages. We'll take a lot of these young colts and we might put them with an old gelding and he will school those horses and actually might put us a month ahead in doing some things because of the herd dynamics of that.
The thoughts that come to my mind with regards to this question is that people generally like to 50 up, so they're going to stay where they're comfortable. What they don't realize is that their redundancy is very redundant to the horse. So people like to do things over and over and over again because they get good at it, right? They like you said, groundwork. They may do like tons and tons and tons of groundwork, and they don't track whether the horse has got the concept and is ready to move on to the next thing. So that's just a lack of the end goal. People may not have the vision of the end goal. So the end goal is to maybe ride that horse. So yeah, groundwork has its place, but the goal is to diminish that you can be horseback. Groundwork is to teach, to me, it's the connection of, it's where communication starts. And it's you being able to direct the horse's feet from the ground. And then you connect those dots of what you can do with the feet on the ground that you try to do them from the saddle. So then you graduate. And as you keep graduating, you keep growing that horse. So people need to be educated in knowing what is the next thing. And if they know what the next thing is, even though they can't do it, they'll be working toward that next thing. And that preserves the horse. Then you're not going over the ABCs a million gajillion times. He's actually maybe learning how to spell the word cat and dog and then form a phrase and maybe write a paragraph, and then you're writing the small book, right? You're writing a novel. So the point of teaching ABCs is that you can do something with it. And that's just where people in today's society love shortcuts, and we have a little bit of that fast food mentality. So we want everything quick and now. So they skip the process. And the process is it's learning all the little details of how to do all of this. And you take time to learn and to grow, and you learn from other masters, right? You go find people that are just way better than you, and you go learn from them, and they will start showing you and presenting that picture for you. And then you start saying, okay, I got to throw the rock a little further now. You know, the best things in life take time, but you kind of have to know what you're doing. It's like with cooking, you know, like I love a good brisket, but brisket needs to be babied, right? It needs all the right spices, and then it's got to go in the smoker for a little while, and then you're going to wrap it, and you're going to let it continue cooking, and then when you get to that 12-hour mark, you might pull it out, and then you're going to let it cool really slow and incrementally. And so you see all the steps, right? It's the process. And people, for one, they don't want to take time to engage in that process. They want everything quick and now, and they want all the shortcuts. But the good stuff with horsemanship and horses and training, it takes time. So it goes back to the same thing that I said in the beginning of this interview. Take the time it takes. But for me, what that also means is go educate yourself. Go be around the best of the best, because they are going to teach you, and the picture will get better. And then you will produce that horse that's happy to show up for the job, right? You might even have to actually show up in the pasture, and he'll come running to you when he sees you, because he's kind of like, what are we doing today? And he doesn't know what you're doing today because you've kind of mixed it up, right? You had one day in the arena, you had one day you check cows, you had another day you worked on trailer loading, you had another day you might have shown him some obstacles, you might have, you just mix it up. But in that, you're being strategic at how you're presenting things to him, so that he's learning, and that he's okay, and he's accepting all the different jobs that you're doing. And as you're honing your skills as a horseman, how you present that keeps getting better and better and better. And that goes back to go be around the best of the best, and they will show you the way, and you'll grow a phenomenal horse.
Do y'all have any advice for people that are out looking for a horse? That seems to be where a lot of success or failure comes from, right there, is how they set themselves up with that initial horse, and there's no shortage of mistakes that can be made there. So what do y'all think about that?
Well, from my perspective, what I try to tell people, and a lot of people don't take my advice, is especially on road horses and performance horses, I'd go buy an older horse that's been there and done that knows this job. You know, I tell people all the time, if you want to learn, and I get a lot of young people that want to be horse trainers, and I tell them to go buy a finished horse and ride a finished horse, because you'll never know what to put in a young horse if you've never experienced a finished horse. You know, so I tell people, go buy an older horse, you know, especially if it's a kid. Don't be afraid of something 15 years old, because the training that you're buying with that, you couldn't afford to put on one. So from my perspective, I'd say go buy an old horse that's been there and done that. That'll be the best money you ever spent, and I think in the long run, it's a very valuable thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think maybe people should seek some professional help in there, pay a trainer to come with them, look at some horses, or is the average person that's ridden a horse twice, are they skilled enough to go buy their own? What do you think?
I think you definitely need somebody that knows something about horses. And I'm not, you know, horse sales are great, but probably not for the first time horse buyer. Chris and I will occasionally run across a horse that somebody, we'll bring them in here and we'll spend 60 to 90 days going through and making sure they are a good horse. And then we'll fit them with one of our clients. And I've made a lot of people mad over the years because they'll come in and want to buy a horse and I won't sell it to them because I know that it's not going to fit them down the road. So I think, you'd be well off to get somebody that knows, that is honest, to go with you and help you determine if that's the right horse.
Mm-hmm. What came to my mind when you asked that question is that if you went to a foreign country where you didn't speak the language, you'd have a translator. And as you spent time with this translator, you might start picking up this new language. But ultimately, the way you're going to learn that language is by studying it. And there's lots of programs that help you, learn new languages. So being with horses it's the same, right? There's a language to be learned from that horse. So then you're going to go get an instructor who is the translator that will help you learn the language. So yes, I agree. If you're new to horses, go get your translator.
I feel the need to call myself out here, and Christine, you may feel a little called out here too, but so tenacity is one of those things we think that we all need. And you and I have a shared experience of kind of gotten put on the professional path by a problem horse that we probably never should have owned in the first place. That I don't know about yours. Mine was very legitimately dangerous, and I pretty much had to sink or swim there. And a lot of the professionals that I know got into it as sort of a baptism by fire sort of a method, and there's none of us that would advise anybody else to take that path. So if you do get that problem horse, you're either going to wind up a professional or never again going to mess with horses, and there's really no in between.
That's for sure. Here's what I see a lot of guys, they'll come here and they go out, I'm going to go out west and buy me a ranch horse, and they go buy them a ranch horse out west, and he's sure enough a solid horse because he's got at least a 6-day-a-week job, and he's working for a living. And they bring him back here and they put him on fresh pasture. And they don't understand those horses can't stand prosperity. And about 2 months into it, they got a knot in their back like a camel, and they just don't understand the dynamic. Some of those horses are bred for a purpose, and they kind of got to have a job. And if you're not a hand, you can kind of get in the mess with them,
I got a little story that brings up. When I was in college, there was a trainer that would send me his tough ones from time to time, and he sent me one. The horse was named Angel. I wrote a short story about him. He had to be half Clydesdale. He had feathered feet. He's 16 and a half hands. He is a blue roan paint. He's got 2 glass eyes and a bald face. And this was the buckinest son of a gun I have ever come across, ever. And he was a West Texas ranch horse, broke to death, sold as a 6-year-old to a little girl who rode him for like a year and a half with no problems. And then one day her dad gets on him to show her how to ride, and promptly the horse jumped the ditch or something and he fell off. And that was the last time Angel was ridden. Dad tried to get back on, and this time Angel bucked him off and broke 4 ribs. And then he went through 5 trainers and nobody had successfully ridden him. And so this trainer didn't want to mess with him and sent him my way. And I get him to the barn, and I tie him to the hitch rail, and I saddle him up. And I'm young enough and dumb enough and cocky enough to think that 5 guys getting bucked off of this horse, I was going to be the one. It was going to be no problem, And so I go to lead him to the round pen, and he promptly snatches the lead rope out of my hand and goes to bucking and snorting. And I use these 3/4-inch manila lead ropes that I make myself. So they're heavy duty, real heavy. He was bucking and spinning like a bull and was spinning so fast that lead rope never hit the ground. And I just stood there. I mean, I know my mouth was open. I'm just looking at him like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I mean, I knew immediately I could not ride this horse. There was no way I was just going to ride the buck out of him, So I always think of old Angel. when I think of those kind of stories of the people wanting to go buy the ranch horse. Probably never gave the cowboy any problems, but like you say, you feed him too much and keep him in the stall 19 hours a day, and he's going to be a different animal there for a while. So, while we're thinking about that too, I find people sometimes need to realize you bought a horse, you didn't marry him. So if this is not working out and you made a mistake, like, it's okay to let that be somebody else's horse and go learn your lesson, and now go buy the 15-year-old that's not green and knows what the hell he's doing, and that you're going to actually be successful and gain some confidence on. And
that's right.
This kind of, I guess, opens the door. Y'all got any pet peeves in the horse industry? A little soapbox you want to get on or preach about or anything?
Man, that's dangerous talk right there.
About the only thing that I see that's come about in the last little bit is the ability to drug some of these horses for a horse show that they might compete a little bit better. There's a mentality. I think that's going to come back to bite us. The sad part is if they don't have the temperament to perform, they probably don't need to be in the performance arena. I see a big downside to that. The other thing is especially I see it in the racehorse world and stuff like that. We have a lot faster horses. We have a tremendous amount of people that can read pedigrees, but we're lacking some what I call true livestock people. We can have the best genotype in the world, but unless that phenotype matches and we put some substance in those horses, we're going to create an environment that's detrimental to us. So I think we got to get back to the basics. Yes, we want to breed good genetics, but there has to be a physical aspect to that horse and a mental aspect to that horse that's going to allow him to perform. So, those are kind of my soapbox things. We need to go back and have that horse that we used to breed that was versatile and fit everything. We've become so fragmented. We've got the cow horse, we got the pleasure horse, we got the halter horse, and that's tremendous. But why can't we breed one horse that fits all the bill and that will stay sound and have a good mental attitude?
Completely agree with you there, and I have to say, like, I haven't been in this deal quite as long as y'all have, but I am finding I see more well-known genetic flaws now than I saw 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I have had a few horses come to me in the last little bit that were extremely parrot-mouthed, and I hadn't dealt with a parrot-mouthed horse in a long time, and now it's like our standards of breeding are falling, and now some of these things we had almost eradicated are raising their heads back up. I completely agree with you on the sedation of horses and all to ride. I've always been against that. I can't believe a bunch of trainers voted to allow that to be a rule that they could do now. I'll also say, on kind of the flip side of that coin, this is probably more of a big deal in the English world, but like, I've never had a problem with a horse that might need a little butte. And like I asked you the question, where are you hurting right now? I'm always hurting somewhere too, and maybe that 19-year-old could just use a little butte today, and he'd be a lot more comfortable. And we've kind of lost our minds on reason there a little bit on that horse. That if I could take some Advil or some Aleve or something and go to the show, then my horse ought to be able to too. I don't think that should be that big of a deal. Anyway,
well, I think we're our own worst enemy. I mean, the HISTA deal with the thoroughbreds and stuff like that. Anytime you get a bureaucracy involved with people that don't understand livestock, that's just a kind of a regulatory group of people, we take it to extremes. I see no problem with a horse, like you said, that needs a little bit of butte every now and then, a little bit of banamine or something like that. I don't think we need to take him out of doing what he does. I think we have to, have a line that's not so stringent that it's almost unattainable, if that makes sense to you. And we've done it to ourselves, and we'll do it to ourselves in this other industry with this drug issue if we don't watch out. And that's what I said. If you're a good livestock person, you'll recognize the animals that don't need to be there, and you'll breed better animals. And that, I think that's what it's coming down to. And that's our focus here. Like I said, I see a lot of these little cutters and roping horses, and they're standing at the stud, and you'll say, "Hey, what's the story on this stud?" Well, he won a bunch of money and broke down as a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. And then you take a moment to look at him and go, "Well, I kind of understand he's not very good made horse." Now, genetically, he's great, and they're breeding a lot of mares, but they're perpetuating the problem. And I see a lot of problems being perpetuated in the breeds.
There was one particular cutting horse sire, and he's probably dead by now. He would be old if he's not. But every picture you would ever see in a magazine was of him broadside on the silhouette, the profile, and I kind of had never really noticed that. And then I saw him at a show, and if you looked at him from the front, he was about as wide as a 2x4. I was like, okay, now I understand why they don't ever give you that picture of him, because he looked pretty good from the side, but not nearly as good from the front or the back, and his colts were pretty well known for breaking down if you needed to let them age a little bit more and not push for the futurity quite so hard, or you were going to break them down. So for sure, we got too much short-term thinking and not enough long-term thinking going on out there.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I don't know if y'all deal with the reining industry much. That was the reining industry. I assume you were talking about with the sedation deal, but they've also got this stallion with the bald face that's promoting the deafness gene out there, and he is the 800-pound gorilla sire in that particular world, and I've had a pretty big problem with that too. How in the world do you take a colt that didn't make it, that's deaf, and kick him out in a 300-acre pasture to just be a horse? I'm not quite sure morally that you can do that, or exactly how that would work out. So, but they have bred a bunch of them. So
there's a ton of them out there, and they have some athletic ability. You can't deny that. And what I find in that, I admire those horses. I watch, Taylor Sheridan has created an industry now that's pretty phenomenal. If you follow it, the money that's involved and the people that are getting involved, and he's been a great promoter. But there's a downside that comes with that. Sometimes we really have to watch out for things like that. And I see a lot of those horses that are being bred. They're very mechanical. I'm used to a horse that's not quite as mechanical and more of a thinking horse. And I think a lot of those horses they're breeding, they're more mechanical than they are thinking horses. But they have a ton of athletic ability. I can't deny that.
Yes, sir. Well, how about within the cattle world? I guess we get off horses for a minute and talk about cattle. Do y'all find, I'm assuming that you're using horses to work the cattle and you're not a four-wheeler or side-by-side guy. Maybe I'm wrong there, but do you find that the cattle and the horses both benefit from being worked together, I guess?
People say they use horses to work the cattle. We use the cattle to work our horses. We're kind of backwards, That's how we train our horses on the cattle, and it's really done a great job for us because we're in these cows every day, usually horseback, riding through them, and we're not a threat to the cow anymore, and the cow's not a threat to the horse. So everybody's fairly confident. And what we found is over the years, I used to rent a lot of ground, and they wouldn't have much working facilities, and I used to have to rope a lot of cattle and treat a lot of cattle. Now, where we're on one location, we've got working pens, satellite pens we can push them to. Very seldom do I have to rope anything in the pasture. But if I do, those cattle ain't scurrying off. I can kind of ride in the middle of them, build me a big loop, and kind of toss it out there and catch one, lay one down, do what I need to do. So it's worked really good. It's helped with their horses. I do admit to using a side-by-side and a dart gun every now and then, when it's 95 degrees outside, and I need to be real easy and not stress those cattle or something, and I've got a pink eye or sore foot, I will slip out there in the side-by-side and use a dart gun if I have to. But it's all animal husbandry. When applicable, we like to use their horses,
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this too, and I don't mean to offend your cowboy credentials or anything like that, but how do you deal with maybe a fresh colt in this day and age? Are you willing to do a little groundwork and round pin him, or is it step up there and hold on, or what are your honest approach these days? I guess if you had your back broke, then you better have a little sense about that. But how does it go for you, Mike?
I turned 60 this week, so I tell you what, the days of stepping in the middle and snapping them out is pretty much gone for me. I'll put them in a round pen, lunging around there, if I've got to, I might hire one of those young guys to step on them for the first couple of rides, under my guidance. You can teach a horse to buck. So basically, Chris and I have tried to diminish that in the aspect we spend enough time with them that we get them used to everything, and very rarely do we have an issue like that. Now, when I was younger, I'd throw the saddle on, step in the middle, and when they quit bucking, I'd open the gate to the round pen and we'd go do a job. But now I ain't near as gritty as I used to be.
Yep. I'm right there with you. I don't really care to. There's another guy, Dr. Joe Gotti, and pretty similar to us in that aspect. He says, I've got about 5 good bronc rides left in me, but I'm saving them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, I concur. I have still had, it kind of surprised me, but I've had a customer that more or less wanted to put me in a bad spot just for his own entertainment. And I was kind of like, look, I'm not 22 anymore. I mean, I probably could ride this out, but I'm not taking that risk just to make you smile. We're going to spend a few days and iron this out rather than just grit my teeth and hang on. I got nothing to prove. The t-shirt's been in my drawer for a long time now. I'm good. So, yeah. Well, I have kept y'all for a pretty good little while here. I don't necessarily have any other questions, but if there's something else that y'all want to get into or something you want to get a little deeper into about with the clinics or whatever, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm trying to be respectful of y'all's time, and I've already run y'all past a little bit what I had intended. So y'all tell me, how would you like to proceed? There anything you'd like to get into that we haven't?
No, I think we've covered our bases. And if anybody's interested in visiting with us, we're more than happy to give you a tour, or if you want to give us a phone call or anything like that. Chris and I are always available. And like I said, our desire is to promote horsemanship and to elevate people. That's what we like to do. We like to see kids coming into this sport. We like to see, I guess our biggest customer is probably the 40-year-old lady with the ex-reining horse that's stepping out and wanting to do something, and we encourage that. We want people to enjoy horses. We want them to learn, and we want to elevate them. And that's our goal. And if anybody wants to contact us and visit with us, we're more than happy to meet with them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think people could go wrong there. I certainly would recommend them if y'all are in their neck of the woods in Kentucky there or within driving distance. I think that'd be time well spent. We'll certainly have links to y'all's Facebook page and website and everything in the show notes for people to find y'all. Christine, you have anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, I think I'm in agreement with Mike that, if people are looking for some help with their horse or wanting to do, step out and do things a little differently, we're here to help.
I tell you what, I just thought of another question. I was going to poke a little fun at you about this, but do you have an essential oil tip that you'd like to share with everybody right now?
Oh, yeah. You'll probably really make fun of me after this.
No. You got a lot of street kid with the bacon grease comment, so I'm good to go. You're fine.
Yeah. What's interesting is the way that the horse's brain is divided. You can take an essential oil and let them smell it. And if they need that oil for physical reasons, they'll really inhale it out of their right nostril, in the right nostril. If they need it for emotional reasons, because of course oils also offer, they call it aromatherapy, right? What actually happens is that because essential oils have very small molecules that when inhaled, the olfactory bulb, the receptors in the olfactory bulb grab onto that. And then they send messages to the brain. So it works for people, works for horses. It might work for other animals. I haven't studied that, but so horses can actually choose what they need. And if it is an essential oil that they do not need at the moment, they'll turn their nose away very quickly. So some of the go-to essential oils, are lavender, which is very calming. Lavender used topically is a great cell regenerator. So I use it on wounds I'm trying to heal up, get the hair to grow back. I'll always use a mixture of tea tree oil, lavender, frankincense is really good, myrrh is the same. But I'll use a blend mixed in like a coconut oil or carrier oil, and I'll put that on the wound, and it really accelerates healing. So that's how I use the oils, is just to help mostly with wounds.
Okay. So no tips for hot dog water, though, huh?
No.
That's fly control. Hot dog water is fly control.
I have actually been, so I make up my own fly spray with just permethrin, but I add essential oils to it. So I'll add tea tree oil and citronella to the 1 gallon sprayer, and I don't know that it works any better or any worse, but I've been trying to get a little bit there. With the bees, I had mentioned this, but if you're trapping bees, you use like a Q-tip or a cotton swab or something, and you use neroli oil and lemongrass oil. And neroli oil is supposed to mimic the pheromone that the queen bee puts out. So the scout bees will be attracted to check out your box. And then lemongrass is supposed to comfort them. And bees particularly like burned out trees. So you can put char cloth or something, or if you have a wooden box, you put a torch on the inside and let it burn the wood, and you put those 3 things in there, and you'll be able to catch you some bees. So there's definitely some stuff going on with some of those essential. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very cool.
Well, I certainly thank y'all for your time. I have enjoyed the chat. It's been a while since I've seen y'all, so it's good to see y'all again and everything. And I hope we get to ride together at some point down the road. So thank y'all for being on.
Yes. Look us up if you're up this way.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Daniel.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dauphin.